Former homeless people, what did you need the most? What was the best thing someone did for you? When I lost my job after the Y2K remediation, I wound up broke as a joke, and no hopes of job from anywhere in Oregon at the time. Girlfriend got asked to come take over her family's failing company business in Utah and we decided to go for it. Got here with nowhere to live, no money, 1/4 tank of gas. We lived in our cars for a while, then we found a row of 3 abandoned houses in Provo and squatted in the middle one. While she tried to rescue the family business, I got a gig delivering those stupid free newspapers that people get in their driveway. Wife's car was a long bed F350, so we could deliver a ton of papers. That's what kept us fed. I was 32 and a paper route was my only income point as far as the nicest thing anyone did. One day a guy came and knocked on our door, saying he was the house owner. We said sorry, and we will pack up and GTFO right now. However, the guy was nice. He said he owned all 3 of these empty houses and thanked us for keeping the crackheads out of them, and he let us stay there. He even turned the power on for us. What the fuck? 6 months after that I wound up getting a job at eBay, and it was onward and upward from there. So really all we needed was a chance. We got it. PS. Thank you all kind strangers for the Silver and Golden Best Comment Award for the 11th of July 2019. I was homeless as a teenager and used to hitchhike around the country. This is the story of the nicest thing a stranger has ever done for me. I hope they get to see this and know I still remember them and appreciate what they did. I was hiking from Wisconsin to New Orleans. I was 15 and pregnant, although I didn't know it at the time. I was sick and throwing up and was trying to get back to New Orleans to go to the charity hospital. I was having a terrible journey. A guy had tried to grab my leg and I resisted, and he dropped me off on a toll road where no one would pick me up. So I spent several days walking until a semi-truck driver finally gave me a lift. He was a nice old man, and I told him up front that I was 15, and he promised he wouldn't try to hurt me. He told me I reminded him of his niece and would give me a ride as far as he could go. I spent a few hours riding with him until we got near St. Louis, and then he pulled off the road at a rest area and asked me if I need to use the restroom. I did, and I was stupid enough to leave my backpack in his truck when I went in to use it. When I came out, he had thrown my backpack out into the parking lot and left me there, and there were bums going through my bag stealing my stuff. I was tired, hungry, and now I had just been robbed of what little possessions I had. Only a few items of clothing remained. I walked down the highway again, and a short time later a car pulled over to give me a lift. The man inside was very overweight, sweaty, smelly, and was wearing just a t-shirt and dolphin shorts. The only reason I accepted the ride was because he had a CB radio in his car, and I thought I could use it to call ahead for another ride. Joke was on me. Once we got down the road he told me the CB didn't work, and now I was stuck in the car with this creepy guy. Luckily, he said he could only give me a lift to the other side of St. Louis. It only took a few minutes before his hand started sliding up my leg. I scooted as close to the door as I could and told him I was only 15 and didn't put out for rides, and he immediately withdrew his hand and apologized. He said he would take me a bit farther to make up for it. A few minutes later, here comes the hand again. I asked him to let me out. He apologized again and said he'd take me further. He started to pull off onto an exit. Me, can I get out here? Guy, no, there's a place I want to show you. I look over, and there's a sign for a lake up the exit, and I instantly pictured myself tied to rock at the bottom of a lake. As soon as he got to the end of the exit ramp, where it meets the off-road, I opened my door, grabbed my bag, and tried to jump out. He grabbed my necklace, one of those thick choke chain kind, and shirt and pulled me back inside, and started choking me with it. I was punching him as hard as I could, and I got a good one right in his nose. He loosened his grip enough for me to pull free, and I ran across the off-road, and back onto the entrance to the highway. First he yelled, "Get back here you stupid bitch," and tried to run after me, but he was too fat, and I was too far ahead, so he tried to hit me with his car. I jumped over the little rail that runs along the ditch, and I guess he didn't want to damage his car, so he kept going and got back in the highway point. Now I'm absolutely terrified that he's going to turn around at the next exit and come back for me, so I'm frantically waving down cars on the highway. My neck is swelling, and it's hard to breathe. My shirt is torn open. I haven't showered or eaten in 3 days. I'm crying. I'm sick. I'm a faking mess. And just to make things worse, it starts to rain point, but then a car pulls over. A cop car. Thanks the gods, I'm saved. I don't even care if I go to jail. At least there will be food there. The officer opens the front door and tells me to get in. It was a lady in a brown uniform. Not sure if she's sheriff, police, park ranger. I have no clue. I'm just happy to be getting away from that faking psycho. I tell her the whole story while she's driving down the highway. She says she'll make sure I'm safe. She takes me to a gas station and gives me $10 to buy some sandwiches. Then she tells me it's going to get dark soon and she can't just leave an underage girl out on the highway at night. So she's going to take me somewhere where I can get some sleep. She takes me to her house and lets me take a shower, and while I was in there she washed my clothes for me. After that, she drove me to a Sonic and bought me some dinner. We went back to her house and she let me sleep on her couch. It was around 4 AM when she woke me up again. Now there's a man there and my first thought is, oh shit, what have I gotten myself into now? She introduces the man as her brother and they tell me that they don't want me hitchhiking tomorrow, so they bought me a bus ticket to New Orleans while I was asleep. They drove me to the bus station and her brother gifted me a huge Bowie knife and said, next time someone tries to hurt you, you use this. And they sent me on my way. I've never been able to repay this woman, but I hope my story reaches her and she knows that she saved my life that day. I made it to Charity Hospital and found out I was pregnant and returned to my family to raise my daughter. Thanks lady, you were so kind that I've spent my whole life trying to pay it forward. You're awesome. Edit. Spacing. I was homeless with a dog, so that made everything a lot more difficult. Just finding enough food and water for us both to survive. When I was first homeless it would get pretty cold at night, and it was hard to keep blankets, because when it rained and they got wet it took forever for them to dry again. Me and my dog would huddle together under a tarp just shivering. This is the best spot we had. Lived at an abandoned tire shop, in a tire rack on a sort of bed I made us of stuff I found in various dumpsters. I would pick up bottles of water, or whatever kind of drink people throw away, and fill them up at a water faucet outside this church that was nearby. They never beached me out, so that was really nice. I was so scared every time I would go to fill up water. I remember shaking so bad, eyes darting around everywhere, ready to bolt. But it was so hot. I was so thirsty and hungry. Sometimes on my way to get water I'd get too tired to even walk anymore from the heat and dehydration. I'd literally fall asleep on the sidewalk on a main street for hours. No one once ever stopped to check if I was dead. The best thing someone did was getting me off the streets. I was passed out under a bride with my dog, and I get woken up by this guy holding a box of donuts. I was in awe. He gave me two, one for me, and I gave the other to my dog. It tasted so good. Food. And it hadn't even been on the ground. He was with 3 people. They were part of an outreach group. They got me into a shelter with my dog that day. I was just crying, so happy, so thankful. I was barely surviving. Someone willing to take a chance. When you're homeless and people find out, it usually results in a negative change in their perception of you, particularly in the perceptions held by those who could potentially be employers and landlords. That's if you choose to disclose the information. Easy to do with employment if you're capable of staying physically clean, that is regular showers and trips to a laundromat. Not so easy to do with a potential landlord, as you have to disclose your rental history. When you tell people you're homeless, you're bound to get people who will treat you with disdain. People who assume you're homeless because of some vice like drugs, alcohol, gambling, etc. There are many reasons for why someone is homeless that have nothing to do with how responsible you may or may not be. Such as natural disasters, fires, floods, illness, or injury, and escaping dangerous situations like domestic violence. I'm not homeless because I'm irresponsible or addicted to some substance, illegal or otherwise. I'm homeless because life threw a wrench at my head and then started beating me with it while I was down. I had a clean rental history, no evictions or anything of the like, and I worked 40 to 60 hours a week to afford my bills, which took priority over everything. I could afford rent, but nobody believed I would pay it just because I was homeless. I was homeless for about 2 years. When I was younger, I had a car, a Nissan Sentra, had like 250k miles on it, no insurance, no registration, had my plate but everything lapsed. A ranger at a local park/campground, where you could camp out for $18 a night, as long as you were in place by 8 PM. Well, he let me just park there knowing I had no tent or camping equipment and I slept in the backseat. I worked 12 hours a day at a gas station pumping gas. One time he brought me half a pie he had bought. FYI, the worst thing was every other homeless person will let you in on a secret. Most homeless people are homeless by choice. They are violent, mostly drug abusers and sociopaths who would kill you for a cigarette. Those people are high. Shelters are worse than prisons. In prison, you can see it coming. You know everyone is a criminal, but not in a shelter. Someone will act like they are a friend 1 second, then try to get you to go out back with 3 of their friends for a discussion. Act a rap. Worse were some of the groups of homeless kids, the runaways etc. They'll befriend you as long as you have cigarettes or drugs, and then at 2 AM, gang up on you, beat the fuck out of you, and take everything you got. They don't give a shit. I saw a heartbreaking style interview with a kid on a local TV station not long after I got into an apartment, and this kid was all, "I've been on the streets since I was 13, blah blah. No one helps me." I knew from others and seeing him that he was a violent mental case who had beat a pregnant girl until she lost the kid. That's the side of homelessness no one wants you to know. Or the couple who will trade the woman for drugs, then try to cut you for the rest. Shit ain't right out there, folks, and you find some homeless people living in a woods or something, stay the fuck away. So the reality of being homeless is a couple of variations. You live in a shelter. Shelters are unlike jails. You have in and out times. Everything is running on their schedule. Lots of rules and very few freedoms. But more than an actual jail, it's an insane asylum, a hustler's market, an old folks home, and finally a place for the few to get back on their feet. Yes, you can get fed and find a way out, but the stress for someone not used to this is insane high. Trying to scam you at every moment, unsanitary, ultra cold sleeping environment with no warm bedding, aggressive staff, all the while you are on edge, not to piss someone off, because you don't want to lose your bed. And the list goes on. Option 2, buy a sleeping bag and live outside, bugs and weather. And how do you spend your off time? Number 3, friends. Not many people have tolerance to help others. Actually, they don't have ability to help others, not even family. We are too self-involved as a society. The reason homeless people exist is for a few reasons. Nobody cares. People take advantage of others' good nature, and it's expensive to be homeless. Option 4 is to buy a hotel every night. Buy food at a gas station. $5 for a sandwich. Think about everything you do every day. That all has a cost. And when you can't get a footing, it's like living in quicksand. Yes, free food exists, services exist, but it's a nightmare to access most times. Spend 3 hours in line for food stamps for them to tell you that you don't have the proper paperwork. Oh no, birth certificate. Sorry, can't help you. Want a birth certificate? That will be $65 in 3 weeks. The bureaucracy involved is insane. Edit. To answer the question, I need people to stop being so deceptive and predatory on both sides. The bureaucracy needs to be more streamlined, if not eliminated. Any questions, Emma? What I needed most was a job. My entire life was structured around obtaining food and shelter first, and then I looked for work when possible. I also needed a weekly MARTA pass to get around Atlanta. Without that pass, I was faked. Living in Atlanta without transportation is hopeless. The nicest thing anyone did for me? Sack lunches. I stayed 3 weeks at a shelter in Merita run by Methodists. There were no sermons. These were just decent people who gave us food and beds for 3 weeks. They volunteered their nights to stay up all night and watch over us. The thing they did that really made me all warm and fuzzy. Every morning when we left for the day, on the way out the door they handed us a sack lunch, typically a peanut butter sandwich, a piece of fruit, and a bag of chips. It was just like being a kid and leaving for school and mom hands you a lunch. That lunch made me feel like someone on this planet actually cared about me. It was the first time I'd felt that in months. I didn't even realize how low I was feeling until that first sack lunch made me tear up like a softie. I'd go out into the world on the never-ending job search, and when I eventually ate that lunch, I felt loved. It really lifted my spirits. I'm pretty anti-religion, but much respect for most ministries in Merita, Methodists United in Service and Trust, and their Snow Shelter, Safe Night of Rest. They really gave my spirits a boost, and I found a job shortly before I left there. There was a lady there named Lisa who was so engaging and kind. Never any condescension or judgmental attitude. They were all quite nice. I really need to send them some money next time I'm flush. Those particular Methodists are such wonderful, compassionate people. I think the conclusions they took from the Bible are diametrically opposed to those taken by the Baptists. Safety. I was homeless from around age 19ish through age 21. I got screwed out of my employment and my sister, who was my roommate, kicked me out when I couldn't make rent. She kicked me out maybe a few days after I lost my job, so she didn't even give me time to find something else. I was living paycheck to paycheck, so I had no savings. I lost my car pretty quickly, which took away even more of my ability to try and get a job. I was in and out of friends' houses, staying with friends in hotels, hanging out in an IHOP, just for a place to be. I became friends with regulars and the staff, so they fed me from time to time. But I can't express how scary and dehumanizing it was. As a female, I got taken advantage of a lot by my friends. They took it as a free pass to be able to do whatever they wanted to me because I had nowhere else to go. It was a dark time and I'm so thankful I never turned to drugs. I had a few friends that genuinely cared and would ask me if I had eaten and bring me food or let me sleep at their house without assaulting me, and honestly, they kept me alive. Eventually my mom had met and married my stepdad, and when he caught wind of what was happening he lost his goddamn mind and immediately bought me a plane ticket to come stay with them. I didn't talk to my mom for years and I didn't know my stepdad, so it was a really hard to transition, but he really was the best thing to ever happen to me. I went from homeless to having a steady career, a wonderful boyfriend, a beautiful daughter, and a very comfortable life. This is late, but I was homeless for a couple months when I was 16, while my mom and her roommate lived in a 40-foot trailer with 2 dogs. We got kicked out, and they stayed there while waiting for the house next to the trailer to vacate. Old sick lady to die. No room for me. My mom would have tried to make room if I wanted, but I knew that would have been worse than what I went through, especially given my strained relationship with her. So I told her I was going to stay at my friend's house for the summer. That was partly true. I was couch hopping most of the time. But I did have nights where there was nowhere to go, no one to help, and so I wandered the streets until morning, when I could go to a friend's house and nap. A couple times, my friend's mom caught me sleeping on the concrete outside, or in my friend's closet, when I wasn't allowed to stay over. I never told her I was homeless, so she had no reason to let me stay every single night. The nicest thing anyone did for me was give me shelter. They fed me and let me wash my clothes, one outfit I was wearing all summer. I remember the laundry part the most, since I was always afraid to ask to use the washer/dryer and my stuff was really dirty. At the end of the summer, I went back to where my mom was staying. Since the old lady was in the hospital at this point, we had full access to the garage. I ended up living in a tent in the garage next to the trailer. It was alright. I had somewhere to put my clothes at least, and wash stuff as the laundry machines were in the garage, and somewhere to sleep without fail, and food. It honestly wasn't that bad, minus the cold at night and some Jerusalem crickets, my biggest fear, that got into the garage while I was trying to sleep. That scraping noise on the concrete is pretty awful. And pissing in the sink, because the toilet in the trailer was worse than a porta potty. I'm female. Most people in this thread had it much worse. But that's just my story. I didn't really suffer all that much, but I got to experience something I think is valuable, and I hope it made me a better person. All of these people are right, but hope helps a lot. I was dumped out on the streets after a week because the people I was staying with thought 6 moons and a slice of sunshine was long enough to have already gotten a job. New York City, so yeah, no lol, and it nearly broke me. I went to their place to get a few important things last week. Actually, they treated me like dirt to the point I was a screaming, sobbing mess. They couldn't tell me why they let this happen to me. They couldn't tell me why they called me family then wanted me to have sex with disgusting strangers to feed myself. They said it was because I lied, but I didn't lie about anything. When I kept pressing, I was told they don't owe me an explanation. No, you only dumped me on the streets of the Lower East Side. No big deal. Whatever. Also, there are a lot more homeless trans youth than you'd think. Most youth in my program were trans or non-binary. Respectable young adults tossed like garbage for what they wear and who they have sex with. My 20th birthday is next week, and I'm a completely different human being. It's kinda weird. Just be supportive of your fellow humans, guys. If you think they're gonna spend that dollar on drugs, just do it. Living homeless for long enough fucks you up permanently. Being an invisible citizen will make you crazy. Let them get drunk and high. They aren't bothering anyone. Maybe in the future we'll realize giving the homeless showers and clothes keeps them off drugs and in work. Homeless as a kid. Food, and food. Stealing food is easy, but most small gas stations will just tell you to leave, and most chain stores will have someone follow you around as soon as you walk in. As a typical rule of thumb, don't give homeless people money, especially kids. Give us food. My sister and I were given money a few times by some very generous people, so naturally we went and spent it on food as fast as possible, only for our parents to come back and get mad that we spent the money we were given. After that we had to give the money to our parents so they could get more drugs. But we could eat any food that was given to us. If you're doing a gift drive or something similar and you give gifts for the kids that aren't practical, coats, gloves, shoes, etc. They need to be small, something that could be easily jammed into a backpack or small duffel bag. If it's too big it'll get left behind. I had a set of jacks and a yo-yo that fit in a pencil bag that I kept with me for years. Also, if you see some homeless kids around an area, often notify OX or your local PD. Odds are that they have a relative looking for them. A state trooper picked my sister and I up off the street and took us to OX, and they got in contact with my cousins in the next town over. We were at my cousin's house before dinner. Also, feel free to ask questions. I'll try my best to answer them. I was homeless as a direct result of my addiction, which was a result of my severe depression. So, first and foremost, I needed therapy. Not only to unpack the depression and addiction aspect, but to unpack the years of degradation caused being homeless and being a drug addict. Society is generally cruel to these people. I find myself even falling into this category at times, despite having first-hand experience. Overall, on a day-to-day basis, I needed food, water, and shelter. Ironically for me, the best thing that happened was getting arrested. This is not the case for many people, as treating addiction and homelessness as a crime does not address the underlying causes of these social pathologies. Lucky for me, my state, Oregon, offered a free drug and alcohol rehab center for high-risk offenders of relapse and recidivism. I spent a year at an inpatient treatment facility and got the help I needed. Today, I'm working with the Homelessness Research and Action Collaborative at my university, and I'm studying homelessness and addiction in graduate school, so that someday I can influence national policy, so that these issues will stop being treated as criminal matters, but instead as social illnesses that arise as a result of failing social systems. I want more programs across the nation, and even the world, like the one I went through. Instead of locking me in jail and temporarily arresting the problem, I was given time and a place to address my specific issues that lead to my addiction and subsequent homelessness. Not everyone agrees on this aspect, but coming from personal experience, I know I only recovered because I received the help that I now realize I always deserved. I was living out of my car and couch surfing for about 2 years. I missed people I could trust, so I would offer to get food, cook for them, do the dishes and leave them leftovers in exchange for a safe place to park, a couch to crash on, possibly a shower, and a meal with people, or hard labor depending on the person. What I needed most was safe places to park, potable running water, and I missed having access to refrigeration, as any perishable food I had to eat as soon as possible, or toss if I got too full and wonder where I was going to eat next to avoid getting food poisoning. I was lucky I had a job, though it wasn't enough to make rent anywhere, to store my stuff with how much I moved for work every month to 2 weeks in the summer, but I was able to save up that way. I was also quite lucky I could afford a $10 a month gym membership that I just left the last address I had attached to my account, so I could keep accessing it when I was in an area where I didn't know anyone and wasn't comfortable couch surfing. The best thing someone did for me was when I found myself 1,000 miles north from home with a boyfriend that said if I moved up with him, I'd never have to worry about being homeless again, but didn't tell me he lived in school housing and hadn't checked with his 5 roommates if it was okay for me to be taken in. So I was back to my car for my first Oregonian winter. A coworker of mine found out and let me crash on his couch for a whole month till I got approved for an apartment. The first night he took me in, the whole passenger side of my car froze over with 2 inches of ice from the freezing sleet that week. If it weren't for him, I think I probably would have frozen to death in my car. I was very unprepared for the weather up there. One night I woke up from a dream he was trying to chase me into some unfamiliar mountain terrain, and I woke up to him staring at me from the foot of the couch at 4 AM. Then he turned and put the TV on. I couldn't really sleep there again while he was home, but I also didn't want to freeze to death. Not the most terrible thing that happened during that time in my life, but creepy AF. Money for heroin or direct giving of drugs. Second, a hot shower. Third, food point. Then I got clean, and a chance was all I needed. Someone to let me have a chance to earn my way. Taking a chance on people with criminal records. I had faked up so many times for years. I had an ankle monitor. It was the middle of summer, hot as fuck, so I'm in shorts. Everyone can see I have on an ankle monitor, and I'm therefore a criminal. I told him, my boss, the whole story. I have over 20 felonies, all non-violent, drug related. He still hired me, taught me a trade, and that really let me get my sheet together. Been working for him going on 7 years, and being clean and out of trouble ever since. Just because someone has a long career of faking up doesn't mean that they won't reach a point for change, but someone has to let them have the opportunity, which is a risk, and you could get burned. I faked over more than I can count people who tried to help me, but thankfully I kept meeting people who let me try again and gave me a shot, and that literally is what saved my life. Taking that chance can let someone become a real person again. Before, it had been over a decade of shooting dope, another 6 or 7 years just doing drugs, faking up, but heroin was what did me in. Not homeless the entire time. By the end I was just waiting for it or someone to kill me. Fortunately I got locked up instead and finally got tired of chasing it. Not just thinking in my head I don't want to do this anymore, like you think about losing weight or eating better. It was at the point of there ain't no other option. I make this shot at getting clean work or I give it up, and this is it. I don't mean to sound over dramatic, but I don't know how else to convey the mindset and the change of mindset from chasing what you wanted to not wanting to chase it, but not being able to stop, and it destroying everything but you couldn't do anything about it. Point, sometimes just giving someone a few bucks to get high so they aren't sick and can make it another day so they can reach that point is the best you can do when addiction is the problem at hand. Sorry this was so long, and I'm on a phone and formatting sucks, but I've lived this and been through it, and I'm big on mental health, addiction and prison reform. I lived on the streets when I was 15. The best thing someone did was give me $200. They were a teacher who I had multiple classes with the year before, and we just ran into each other. The thing I needed was someplace safe to go. I had issues at home, that's why I ran away, but police kept trying to send me back to that. I was even capable and smart enough that I set up a way to start college early, at 16. But social services then intervened and took me out of the place I finally had gotten, along with some college roommates, and forced me to live with another relative, one who just happened to be a tweaker. That relative thought they could get money by taking me in, and after 6 months of not getting anything, kicked me out. Honestly, social services faked my teen years up. Instead of getting a bachelor's degree by 20. I wasn't even allowed to get my JED until I was 17 because of their insanity. I ended up homeless multiple times because they kept sending me to bad homes because they didn't believe a 16-year-old could support themselves if they had just let me do things the way I had started. I would've had a head start on independence and a decent life. Instead, they sent me into homes with greedy abusers and drug addicts. Social services should listen to the kid, and if they are in a good place, even if it's a 15/16-year-old working full-time and living with older people in a rental, they should leave them alone. They didn't listen to me at all, neither did the police. They basically just kept hitting the reset button on my life, forcing me to redo stuff that should been done already, while putting me into the hands of adults they did believe, who were all awful people. Well, obviously money and my job, lol. I'm so happy I had a job when I found myself homeless. I ended up renting a storage unit and living in there for a while. Basically, when I first realized I'm going to be homeless, I plan out everything I'm gonna need to take care of. First, somewhere for me to stay out of the elements, so storage unit. Then it was hygiene, so the storage unit was right next to a gas station. I would get up early for work, go into the restroom and shave, brush my teeth, wipe my face and stuff real fast. And then I got a gym membership, so I had a place to shower and the place had some laundry, so I was able to throw in a small load workout, shower and leave. There was also a laundromat not too far from my storage unit, maybe a mile or 1.5 miles. Other than that, I had to invest in a watch, so I know what time it was when I'm in my unit. Eventually I got a small portable charger to help charge my phone while I was sleeping. Also, I charge that and my phone at work, and sometimes I would go to the restaurant across the street and ask them to charge my phone, and I'll read a book while I'll drink at the bar. I got those little sticky lights to put up on the side of my unit, and I made sure the storage unit was just big enough for me to lay down a twin size mattress. The worst part was I had to have a piss jug cause the restroom was in the main office, and I'm not sure if they had a security, but they had cameras in the building, so I wanted make sure I stay as hidden as possible. Also, I had to have a knife with me. There was definitely other people in there. I could hear muffled talking or a cough once in a while, and since I'm in the unit I couldn't really lock myself in. And for the person who helped me the most is my sister. At this point I haven't talked to her in years, just no communication. And she calls me out of the blue, and we are chatting, and she asked if I wanted to stay with her. At this time I told her I gotten a divorce and living on my own trying to pay bills. I said yes, and my life took off since then. I'm doing great now. I got a wife that loves me and a cat that is crazy. I have 2 cars, lol, and we are looking to get our own home instead of apartments in the next year or 2. Oh, and we have plans to start our own business within a few years. So point, but that's my story, or the basic of it. There's so much craziness I can go about, but this comment is long enough. I'm late to this but homeless right now. I got extremely lucky with how things played out. I left Texas and went to LA, Santa Monica because of weather, and I figured it was a long time. I needed good weather to survive. Day 2 of being here, on Reddit I bumped into a guy that was homeless a year prior, also in SM. He met me and bought me dinner and gave me $20, and we talked and got to know one another. Fast forward 2 months later, once a week I crash at his place with his roommate that was also homeless. I get a good night's sleep, something that I cherish. I get a warm cooked meal of my choosing. I get company of similar interests people. We watch movies and TV shows. For the release of Stranger Things season 3 I got to be there, and we watched the entire season. I get to do laundry. I have a human connection. I can text anytime about anything. The first guy bought me my birth certificate and had it mailed to his place so I could get my ID. He talked to his boss who hired him off the streets about me, and as soon as my ID gets in I have a job to go to. The other guy is offering to pay for a gym membership so I can take real daily showers instead of going into the ocean or using those little beach showers. They are funding everything like that to keep me going. Hell, they even put me on their Netflix account so I can watch movies and shows during the day. I have friends online that have sent me money on PayPal. That goes to stuff I need. I'm saving most of it for bills when I have them again. Those two guys and I are going to get a 3-bedroom place and split it. I'm part of the family now. I had one Twitch streamer who back in the day I had watched daily for hours and donated a lot of money to offers me the ability to ask for any of it back when needed. He then sent me enough to buy a power pack for my phone. This allows me to stay outside flying my sign, making money and food longer. An investment of sorts. The city I'm in, I have regulars that walk past me asking if I need anything. They give me stuff daily. I fire sign, and while it's illegal in the spot I'm in, I didn't know this. No one makes me move. I keep to myself. I keep my area clean, and I don't ask anyone for anything. I'll let the sign do all the work. I average $15 a day and more food than I can eat, and I can put away food, mind you. The worst part is sleeping. The fear of being robbed every single night is real and happens. Getting into a fight is a real issue as well. I sleep with a knife in my hand and a literal eye open all night. It's not easy, and I'm exhausted. So what things are needed? Socks. These are the biggest thing anyone that has been out here will agree to. Socks are the best thing. Feet care is hard, but extremely needed, and a fresh pair of socks is orgasmic. Snacks is a good thing too. Jerky is great. Keeps well, light to carry and protein. Hygiene stuff like toothpaste, toothbrush, soap, hand sanitizer, tampon/pads. Money is great, but so are items. As long as it's not heavy or bulky. You have to remember we carry our entire life in our backpacks. There is a lot of weight on us already. Something I don't think many people will say here either, but a conversation. Even if it's quick 2-minute thing. I don't do drugs, I don't drink, so it's different with me. People can approach me easily, but talking to me like I'm a human is amazing and uplifting. So many people give me terrible looks as they walk past or just ignore me. I have had people scream at me about how I should be in jail, how I should stop drinking or doing drugs, how I'm a burden to society. I have had things thrown at me, spit at, yelled at, fake punched at, accused of being a thief, and once accused of obviously being so retarded I can't even hold a job. People don't know my story. They don't know that here in a week or two I'll be working. They don't know I have 2 people about to split a home with me. They don't know I'm working to get out of this as fast as I can. They assume I'm a junky, worthless pile of shit. Those people I see each day, some regulars most random, that make eye contact and smile and nod back at me means the world. It gets me through. There are things I need still, and would be grateful for, but I work my ass off each day to not sink. To get what I need to make it to the next day. I know I'm close to being out, and the people that care about you is the best feeling. I'm not good with that. I don't know that feeling well enough at all from my family upbringing. It's really changed things about me, and being homeless has changed me as a person. I was homeless with 4 children and a disabled husband. At first we were in a variety of motels, but it was so expensive. I got a job and started working 9 days after we were forced to leave where we were staying. We were homeless from December 2018 to April 2019. My children never missed a day of school. Once we stopped paying for motels we would sleep in our minivan. We were able to save up a security deposit by spending almost nothing. A friend let us shower once weekly. We spent nights in various parking lots. We wore fresh clothes daily. We had food stamps, but heating food was difficult, and it's nearly impossible to cleanly make even a sandwich without running water. Some nights I would heat up family-size frozen dinners in the microwave, right before I left work. My husband often spent hours playing board games with the kids at a McDonald's after school. One night, just before we pull in the parking lot to the grocery store, smoke starts coming out from under the hood. The fire wasn't very big, but the minivan was totaled. The manager from the grocery store gave the kids milk boxes and a huge amount of chicken strips and potato wedges. One of the firemen asked me if I wanted him to call the Red Cross. We ended up spending the next few nights in an abandoned shed. The kids were on spring break, so I sent them out of state to spend time with a relative until school started up again. This relative is not mentally stable enough to stay with long term and lives in an incredibly high cost of living area, so they were not a long-term option. The Red Cross came by my work the day after the fire and gave us hygiene kits and a cash card with over $1,000. I ordered pizza for dinner that night and we ate until our stomachs hurt. We moved into current house 17 days after the fire. The best gifts we received were the ability to buy hot food. Shortly before we left our home in November 2018, one of our children had an anxiety attack at school and a particular staff member contacted CPS and they interviewed our children several times and closed the case. While we were living in the series of motels, we were completely open with CPS about our living situation. We applied for places in homeless shelters, but every place was full and told us to stop calling. We tried to make everything as fun and carefree for the kids as possible. Our youngest would sing a song from Daniel Tiger about a family trip. The kids were frustrated initially because 6 people sleeping in a minivan is very cramped. We padded as much as we could with pillows and blankets. For a while after we moved into the house we all still slept in one bed, then one bedroom. In very odd ways I enjoyed being homeless. I had more free time because I wasn't always cleaning or trying to get the kids to do chores. One person I owe a huge thank you to, I can never properly thank. The person who helped us find the abandoned shed and made it safe for us to sleep in. I'm actually currently homeless myself, but this is far from my first time. I'm going to answer this a little bit differently, just hoping I can help anyone with less experience. Some of the best tips I've learned have been to try and find a place that you can camp out in the woods. If you can manage that, it becomes a lot easier to survive. I'm currently camping by my work, so I got lucky on that one, but a solar camp shower will be your best friend. There are even some options on places like Amazon, so that you can wash your clothes as well. I have this thing that looks like a blue toilet plunger, but it's actually a mobile washer. There's also some that are laundering bags. Put your clothes, some soap and water in the bag and scrub. You'll have clean clothes shortly. Since in this day and age a cell phone is pretty much a necessity, finding a good solar charger/battery pack can help you stay connected to the world and assist in a job search if you're unemployed. Plus, it can help stave off the worst part of homelessness, at least for me, boredom. 4 Personal hygiene. I can't stress enough the value of baby wipes and baby powder. Athlete's foot and jock itch can be a huge issue, but by powdering your shoes and groin, you can keep most of the moisture at bay. Also, dryer sheets can help keep a lot of stink away, as well. And if you have a way to get to one, a Planet Fitness or similar gym membership is around $20 a month, and you can shower to your heart's content. Don't waste your money on a truck. Stop shower unless you have no other option. I know this advice won't help as much if you're homeless in the city, but if anyone has any questions about how I prepared or wants some links to the items I've mentioned, just send me a PM and I'll get back to you. A safe place to sleep and/or park. Rarely ever happened. I've let so many people stay/crash at the places I've lived throughout my adult life. I felt like karma would work in my favor when I went homeless due to job loss. Not so. Maybe I was a crazy tornado, but even now that I'm well back on my feet, I'm still shocked at how many friends whom I had greatly helped in the past abandoned me when I was at my weakest. They didn't make me feel loved. They made me feel like I was a criminal and a loser. I had been a C-level executive just years before and then laid off and struggled to find similar paying work to cover my overhead. I had just lost my father and gradually lost everything, almost my mind. My family and friends stopped talking to me. I was thrown to the lions. I was in a dark place. And boy did it feel like I was in heaven when one longtime friend of mine who lived nearby where I was homeless let me stay at his place to avoid the blistering heat. It takes so little to do so much for people. No one understands homelessness until they go through the real deal. Many people who are homeless are simply people who weren't loved right and continue to stay homeless so long as no one loves them. Nothing more daunting than feeling like nobody has your back in life. That's the scariest part of homelessness. Love is what made my friend letting me live in his bedroom for a month so important and helpful. He didn't judge me, just would say simple things like, "Ah man, that's what friends are for." I will never forget my friend and his wife's kindness. It saved my life. There are so many homeless people who would be thriving citizens if someone would seriously just lend a dedicated hand. Never in my life have I wanted to hoard anything for myself. Homelessness will teach you how to really appreciate simple things, and when you start to get back on your feet, the gratitude you feel for every nice thing is an intoxicatingly beautiful feeling. Just to have regular access to a shower again never gets old. I'm so thankful for every shower I take. I found that homeless people can be some of the most selfless and heartwarming people ever. They are exhausted of the large volume of love they have given out in their life with little reciprocity. Oh god. Where do I even start? I became homeless after I came out as trans. It went basically as bad as it can go. The things that faked me over: no address, no food, even getting things like ID costs money, trekking all over the city for resources with a disability, no credit, no guarantor, no income. Holding down a job is hardship when leaving homelessness is a full-time job itself. Not having stable mental health treatment. For a while I was too unstable to fully pursue getting housing, but I needed housing for stability, to support my mental health. Honestly, just a home. Basic stability is so important. Life sucks when you're stuck on basic survival. You're giving it your all and all that people can see is that you're staying the same. You're traumatized as fuck, and you can't even deal with that because you are being continuously traumatized. Our systems are designed to fuck poor people over and make it near impossible to get out. Everything is one shot only, or you end up even more faked, and the anxiety of that is intense. The only thing that got me out was that I had a community ready to give me money so I could get out, and I was fortunate enough to have access to a pro bono legal organization and have rich parents to sue for child support. Now that I have a room and stability, even though my mental health is still shit, it's so much better knowing I have food, a roof over my head, and several months rent. This isn't usually something I do on Reddit, but I'd like to share the lyrics of a song I wrote while I was in the midst of everything. I want to share the kind of mental state I lived in. When do I get to live? / when does my life begin? / and I gave all I could give / but when push comes to shove, well enough s not enough / and oh / I've been down this road / running while I'm empty / it leads me and leaves me waiting / and though / I've been down this road / making it up as I go / I want my life back / I want my life back / give me my life back, my life back. I spontaneously moved to LA, California, and was homeless for 6 months. Something I really needed was my phone. Communication was everything. Whether it be for a job, a lifeline, looking up hotels / hostels / Airbnb / ECT, navigating, coupons for meals, etc. My phone was something I would make sure to have / keep on. It was an invaluable resource. The best thing anybody did was let me stay them. I've had one friend who was actually homeless himself, but in some situation, found himself apartment sitting. RIP to his beautiful soul. He helped me for 3 weeks while I cleaned and paid what I could while still trying to save. I also have a friend I actually met at a hostel that I was working at to stay there for free. She would come a few times a month and was only there so she had a cheap place to stay in the city for the weekend, since she was from Vegas and currently staying in the IE. We instantly clicked and still are very close to this day. She stayed with her aunt in the IE to attend college classes. I was out of money and had nowhere to stay for the first time ever. Although I've eventually had to spend 3 nights on the streets during this whole journey, my parents had loaned me $30 for a hostel the night before. Bless their hearts, but this time they wanted me to come home, so they were going to buy me a plane ticket. I decided to say goodbye to a few close friends, and this wonderful girl refused to let me go like that. She had somebody drive over an hour right then and there to pick me up, and I stayed with her and her aunt / cousins in the IE for a good month while I lined up jobs and got a plan together. I was, of course, always nice and made sure to clean up the house every day, but honestly, my whole journey would have been a different one if it weren't for these souls. This trip honestly made me realize how much more I need to appreciate and love people. I escaped my family home when I was 17 because I'm gay and they're abusive as holes. I was very naive and utterly unprepared. I had a bicycle, my science textbooks as I'd just gotten into university, the clothes I was wearing, and about $20 point in terms of unofficial help. There was a worker at a cinema who'd studiously look the other way when I did a sheet job of sneaking into overnight movie marathon screenings. Didn't sleep much, but was safe, and saw a lot of cool movies. A volunteer at a second-hand shop let me have a suit for free when I mentioned it was for my first ever job interview and I really needed the job. The best official help I got was my university student union let me use their postal address to receive mail. This meant I could access welfare, as you need a mailing address for that. The social worker had to get paperwork from my parents to disown me before I could qualify for welfare. They wrote a nasty ranty essay about how I should submit to my place and duties in the family and not pursue unnatural desires. The social worker scoffed at my parents' letter and processed their disownment. Once I had my job and a little welfare, I was able to rent a room in someone's house and start concentrating on my studies. I completed my science degree in 4 years. After being a homeless youth, I was a lead analytical chemist in a laboratory 10 years. After being a homeless youth, I qualified as an air traffic controller and bought myself a house 13 years. After being homeless, I took my first board position 15 years. After I was homeless, I completed my MBA, and last year I published my first book. This year I published my second. Everyone who's homeless needs the right help for them. People have a picture in their heads of who a homeless person is and what they need. The fact is, most homeless people are what I was: women and children escaping family violence. So my advice, if you want to help a homeless person, is stop and listen to them respectfully about what they need. Also, think before you vote. Progressive governments put more resources into shelters, family counseling and women's legal centers, more than you can achieve through personal philanthropy. I'm not really ready to discuss my 4-year adventure as a homeless person in entirety just yet. It's a large amount of emotion and information to process. I will say that you learn very quickly that you have to depend entirely on yourself, meaning your intuition, vision, and moral foundation. If you need something while homeless, and it requires a third party, you are doomed. You must become a soul machine of self-believing accomplishment and stability. Lacking all of that, you are faked beyond belief. That's the non-religious revision point. As far as the spiritual side, I came to realize many things that caused me to wonder, after reading the Holy Bible, how large groups of people create a false reality that causes many to suffer for no good reason. No legitimate rationale behind any of it, but it becomes a reality anyway. I realized that, although America was a gift from God, Americans are in extreme danger of God's judgment. Not because people are gay, or because people are having sex outside marriage, but due to the way the common person is treated here in America, the way Americans treat each other, and the low value that is placed on the life of an average person. We laugh and mock the Catholics, but they are the only religious group that runs charities and homeless shelters without any string attached. I literally walked into a Catholic shelter and was allowed to take a shower. No issue or drama like what I experienced at other shelters run by Protestants, and also those aimed at assisting military veterans. The Catholics bend over backwards to help everyone without asking for anything in return. Those involved with that effort have to endure quite a bit from those homeless people who are troubled. So for those of you on the anti-Catholic bandwagon, God forbid that you ever go homeless and hungry, because it will likely be a Catholic shelter helping you. In terms of supplies, the biggest things were the obvious big 3 essentials for survival: food and water and shelter of some kind, or at the very least warmth. To that end, I had a big parka made for below freezing, thermal one-piece ankle to neck long johns, thermal socks, sweaters and other things of that nature, but most importantly for heat was emergency blankets. If you don't know what those are, look them up, but basically, it's a foil blanket that is amazing at insulating heat and not letting any escape when you wrap yourself in one. They work so well I was overheating in the dead of winter. Those were my best friend. I also camped in a small ice cave on a mountain in my area during nights with high winds and or heavy rain/snow, but tried to avoid it if I could because it was damp and I'm pretty sure it was moldy. Food was important, but more so was water, since I could comfortably go a couple of days, maybe 3 without any food but not water. However, pretty luckily most places let you fill reusable water bottles for free, and if not just use a restroom sink. So water was rarely an issue. And in terms of food, my best trick was I would watch when 7-Eleven would cook new stuff, and wait until they started a new batch of the pizzas, chicken, hot dogs and other food stuff, and before they threw out the old stuff from the previous batch that didn't sell, so it had to be tossed, and I would ask if I could have whatever didn't sell that they had to throw out because of corporate policy, and 6 or 7 times out of 10 got pieces of pizza, chicken, hot dogs, taquitos, and whatever else they had point. But the thing I needed to most was a friend, a real friend. It was lonely. Soul-crushingly lonely at times. It almost felt like I didn't exist, like I wasn't really there or even real. People paid no mind to me. I longed for someone to sit with me and talk, to have a conversation with someone that didn't involve them being behind a counter. I was homeless in high school, but TBH it was in a nicer area, and I was able to sleep at my school, secretly, and bum food off my friends. That was honestly pretty easy. Point then in my 20s, I got fired from the only job that would let me work full time during after school hours while I was in college, and couldn't afford to keep my apartment, so I became a rubber tramp. I slept in my car, then sold my car, got a pittance for it, and bought a van. Pose 15-year-old junker that barely ran, slept in the van, then saved up from working part-time to buy a mattress to stick in the van, and kept going to school. Basically, I had waited so long and worked so hard to go to college that I prioritized finishing over everything else, my health, my finances, everything. I wouldn't have forgiven myself if I'd quit and gone back home to my abusive family. I was able to shower at my school's gym. However, I could not afford a parking pass at my school, so I could only use the facilities when I actually had something to do on campus, because otherwise it was out of the way of everything else. Point what I needed the most? A damn toilet. So many fucking places wouldn't let me pee. I never understood it. They had public restrooms. I kept myself pretty clean. I was friendly. I asked politely. I never made a mess. I never stole. And I'm a woman, so it's not like I could just run behind a dumpster or something. I mean, I did way more often than I wanted to, but it's rough, and if you only have one pair of pants you're faked. Good luck not pissing on yourself. I now have the most absurd bathroom anxiety. I'm literally terrified of needing to pee when I'm not at home. In the end, I had to pretend to be pregnant to guarantee that I'd be able to use the bathroom, or I'd be stuck pissing in empty bottles. I'm still really angry about it, TBH. One guy tossed me a bag of crack out from his car window. I didn't have a glass dike, so I just swallowed it all. I lost consciousness a little bit later. When I woke up, I was sitting in a big leather office chair behind a desk. I freaked out. I was in what looked like someone's office. I turned the placard around, and to my surprise, it was my own name. I had a big panic attack right then and there. There was a hand mirror in my desk drawer, and I looked into it. My face was clean shaven, I had a nice haircut, and my teeth were straight and white, unlike the brown nubs my meth/crack addiction had previously reduced them to. This had to be some sort of trip or hallucination. Point I had an iPhone in my pocket. I didn't know the password to it. It had a thing that scanned my thumbprint to unlock, so I used that. I looked through my photos, saw a ton of stuff. A picture of me, and a beautiful woman and little boy who looks strangely like me when I was a kid. Pictures of all of us at Disneyland and rafting, all sorts of stuff. This had to be a hallucination or elaborate joke. Point last thing I could remember, I ate some crack and took a diarrhea dump into my pants while screaming into the night. There was a knock at the door, and a very attractive woman walked into my office, holding a large bag. Here's your salad. Tap out King 666. I'm going to grab your dry cleaning after lunch. Okay. I just nodded and smiled as she dropped the food onto my desk and left. Point I checked my wallet, which was stuffed full of 100s. My ID had an address to it. I had keys in my pocket. I grabbed the salad bag and then found my way down to the parking garage, hitting the button on the key fob. A Lamborghini lit up. My head started spinning. I got inside and started driving, mapping the address which was on my license point. While I was on the freeway, my head started spinning even more. The cars and scenery started to flicker and change. It was like the world was flickering. My eyes blurred, and when they readjusted, I was actually cruising down a dim dirty alleyway inside a shopping cart, my legs dangling out the front. I had a half-eaten maggoty McDonald's salad container resting on my belly. I could feel wriggling inside my mouth. I moved suddenly, causing the accelerating cart to flip, dumping me onto the pavement. More turds flew out of my ass and into the back of my ripped up urine-soaked pants. I could see my face in the reflection of a puddle. Good old hobo head with brown teeth again, looking back at me with jaundiced eyes. I really dodged a bullet that day. Eating that bag of crack showed me what sort of hell my life could been. How I became homeless. I was homeless for 2 months in West Virginia because my stepdad was extremely abusive to my brother and I. He would deny us food so that we would literally only eat one meal a day if we were lucky, and that's only just one thing he did. I ended up having to call the cops when I confronted my mother about her boyfriend's behavior, and she threatened to beat me up and possibly kill me. I was 18, so the cops told me I could just leave. So, I packed up some of my shit in 2 trash bags and stayed with my girlfriend and her family for 2 weeks. That was definitely one of the best things that was done for me. I ended up just sleeping, crying, and eating for those 2 weeks because I was so hungry and scared. Things I needed: a domestic violence shelter that actually helped me. My girlfriend's mom was a volunteer for the Women's Resource Center for Domestic Violence. I called them and explained my situation. After putting me on hold, they said I didn't qualify for their services and transferred my call to the homeless shelter. I found out later that I didn't qualify because I was only 18 and the center only took people who were over 21. A decent homeless shelter. I ended up staying a month in the local homeless shelter. I was put in the smaller room with only 5 women. The shelter was dirty, filled with roaches and bed bugs. People would steal from you regularly. There was also a female worker on the women's side who would grope women while they were in the shower. One woman was even groped right in front of her daughter. However, if a victim complained, they were kicked from the shelter. The worker, to this day, still works there. They would also call CPS if you were a homeless family with children. Not because of abuse or anything. Just because the family was homeless and the workers would get paid by the state for reporting them. I actually helped a family escape so their kids weren't taken away. We got wind that CPS was gonna take the kids after they got out if school, so the parents picked them up while we packed their shit up. They came to the shelter and we loaded up their car. They left for Ohio to live with the woman's family. Whenever we were asked where they went, we all lied and said they were gone. And that was just the woman/family side. I'm a trans guy, so they put me on the women's side and no one gave a shit. The men's side was even worse. One man was even stabbed in the shelter and died in my then boyfriend's arms as he was loading the guy up in the ambulance. There was blood on his shirt from the incident that I saw the next day that I asked about, and that's when he told me the whole story. Honestly, the homeless shelter was just a dumping ground. The hospital would regularly take people that were in the mental ward with no family and dump them at the homeless shelter via ambulance when their insurance ran out. And the homeless shelter itself was just in it for the money. They would have people in the shelter go on benefits just so they could take 25% of their income. They wouldn't even try to get these people into affordable housing. It was just a dead end that sucked you in a soup kitchen that provided more than one meal a day on only certain days of the week. I often would eat my lunch and then beg, dumpster dive, or help others steal for any other food. On the days where they didn't serve a meal, I often went hungry. It got to the point where I didn't feel hungry anymore. No hunger pains, no stomach growling, just an emptiness that seemed to seep into my soul. Help! I was an 18-year-old kid with family who sided with my mother. I literally had no one. I couldn't get a job. No one would hire me since I didn't have any experience. I would beg for money and people would just look right through me. I started to wonder if I was actually dead and just a ghost wandering the earth. The two best things that were done for me. I had a routine where I would go into fast food places that were about to close and ask if they had any extra food that they were gonna throw away. That way it didn't seem like I was really begging. Well, one night I went into the local McDonald's. I asked them if they had the extra food and the manager took pity on me. He paid for a whole fresh meal, gave me a cup for a drink, and had me sit down to eat. He sat across me and asked for my story. I told him about how my stepfather had forced my brother's locked door open in the middle of the night in order to scream at him, how we were chased out of the kitchen when we were hungry, and how my stepfather had tried to dunk my brother's head in a sink full of maggot moldy dishwater. I told him I had finally had enough and left for my safety, and that I was scared of my mother and stepfather finding me, forcing me back home, and doing God knows what to me. He listened the entire time. After I was done, he gave me some money and told me to try to get off the streets the best I could. Don't do drugs, he said. He was very kind and fatherly towards me. A customer in the store heard that and gave me a ride back to the townhouse I was staying in with 12 other homeless people. Didn't even mistake me for a prostitute or try to rap me like most men on the street. My den mother couldn't believe that I had been shown so much kindness and considered me to be lucky. My grandparents eventually heard what happened to me and took me in. They paid for my bus ticket from West Virginia to their home in Maryland. They helped me find a job and enroll in college, but then they kicked me out in the second semester of my second year. I wasn't able to pay rent on my own without working full time, and I didn't have enough time for school. Some people can do that. I can't. I've been so traumatized by the domestic violence, homelessness, and abuse I have sustained in my life, mostly as a child, that regular life is hard for me, let alone struggling with juggling working full time and studying part time. So, I had to drop out. I guess that makes me weak, but I don't care anymore. P.S. I'm okay now. I live with my fiance, and he helps take care of me. I'm applying for disability due to my trauma. I saw a lot when I was homeless. People smoking meth, a woman almost dying of a heroin overdose, kids showing me scars from their former abusive foster parents. It's left me rattled. I have little hope for this cruel, senseless world. All I want to do now is rest. I'm just so tired from fighting all 21 years of my life. I'm ready to retire and focus on trying to put together what's left of my shattered, depressed, and now psychotic mind. Not homeless, but have a friend of my mom and I who we met while he was homeless and have spent a lot of time with, and his favorite things with gave him are a towel, socks, and a nice pair of jeans in his size. His favorite though was the time we spent with him. So one day my mom and I were leaving Denny's near our house and saw a man with all his possessions sleeping on the park bench outside. It had been a cold, wet Florida day, winter, and so we checked our trunk to see if we had anything we could give him. All we could find was this thick, brightly colored towel. I walked over to him to give it to him and notice he is sound asleep, which I'm sure is hard to achieve on a cold hard park bench, so I lay the towel next to him and leave. Now we drive past this bench every day, to school and from work, etc. Every day he has it covering his possessions, and every night he's wrapped inside of this bright, flowered towel. Never once have we seen him begging or move from the bench. So we go to Denny's again a week or two later and order him a cheeseburger and fries to go, and we hand it to him on our way out. He was thankful and quiet and we left. A couple weeks later we invite him to have dinner with us and we'd pay for it and he agrees. He tells us about his life. He was honorably discharged and also used to be a CEO of a business and was quite well off. He was quite religious and one day God told him to drop everything and live on the streets to spread the word of God, to live a humble life. So he does so. He explains how he still has money in the bank, just saving. He pays for his daughter's house and college, has a cell phone and much others, and to our surprise, paid for the meal when he had told us he was going to use the restroom halfway through to make sure we wouldn't pay. We didn't have much money at the time as my parents were split and my mother is a teacher, so this was just so unexpected and appreciated. Every day before school we would leave early to bring home home-cooked food and breakfast and just sit with him for a bit. All the waitresses at Denny's knew him and told him his family would come up every week and spend time with him. He loved hearing about our lives and never forgot a single thing, bringing them up the next time we spoke. "Oh, is still in the hospital. Is the cat feeling better? ECT." Shortly after the city removed the bench he was basically living in, so he relocated to a storage unit down the street. He used it to store his items. The employees at the facility even gave him a key to the gate, so he could enter and exit the facility and restroom at night after the gate was locked. The rest of his day would be spent sitting on a curb of the sidewalk, not the street curb, but a 2-foot cement wall between the sidewalk and storage facility. He was robbed a few times, but never took it personally and always said he didn't mind it, as long as they didn't try to hurt him or take anything. That meant a lot to him. Basically, if he could buy it again he didn't mind. He'd say they probably need it more than I do. We still visit him as often as possible. We take him to doctor's visits, shopping, whatever he needed, but couldn't get to as he had major back issues from the military and could barely walk. He was always so nice, brought a smile to our face, was so grateful for everything we did, and is truly an amazing human. Was briefly, a few months, homeless after escaping an abusive family situation, and abusive/rappy school staff and abusive relationship, all around bad stuff. I didn't really have any friends from high school/in the city I was sent back to after the school situation, so I really had nowhere to run, and couldn't get any work without an address. But even with a temporary PO box not even McDonald's would call me in for an interview. I had my car at least, but struggled with showers, paying for gas and food, and taking care of my cat, who was honestly the only reason I had to live for at that point, so I wasn't about to give her up, and I'm happy I didn't. The things that were very rare, but helped the most were, girl from high school I spoke to maybe once, and was one of the very few people who was nice to me ever, but I wouldn't call a friend let me use her school parking space for a while, since she didn't have a car anymore, but it would give me a safe place to park overnight, and sleep with less fear. Since I was student age too I could somewhat pass as a student and hang out/job hunt/figure things out in the more public and safe parts of their campus, where student IDs aren't needed really. The access to gym showers was great, even though I'd have to wait for someone to not be at the desk. This arrangement didn't last long, but it helped a lot. The church/mission/non-city main homeless shelter nearby wouldn't let me stay there unless I gave up my cat, but someone there helped me out with cat food and some cat litter that got her through the next few months. Tampons. I grabbed what I could before bailing, because I knew period supplies were expensive, but good god they're horrible when you run out and don't have the money for anything. The second I wasn't homeless and wasn't penny pinching quite as much I got a menstrual cup. If any of you work with shelters or women who are homeless please donate period supplies or menstrual cups. I only stayed literally homeless for about a month, and that's because I made one of the smartest moves in my life back in 2010, buying a Toyota that will probably see 4 more US presidents before it finally gives up the ghost. So I actually had some place to sleep in the parking lot of Walmart's that was also reliable transport and personal gear and food storage. Gas money was another thing entirely, since if you don't have mass transit, how are you going to get to your homeless advocate meetings, your medical appointments, the food stamp office, the homeless shelter itself? There is quite a bit of paperwork and travel required to get public assistance to get you through, and even a great homeless advocate is so busy, they can't drive you everywhere. You've got to do a lot of legwork yourself. I did have to swallow my pride and ask a Catholic church in town for a gas card. I got spotted a $20 card and was finally able to find new work this month to pay it back to them in form of a cash donation. So feeling even is a nice feeling. Helps the pride re-establish itself, which is itself important. Your pride can fuck you into more homelessness though, from refusing to ask for help, just as well as it can be the motivator to get you out of homelessness. Everything in moderation. I had a great homeless advocate, though. That man works, and he's competent as fuck. He knows people all over the city, and has strings to pull for days. He's been at it for decades. So I got lucky at having an exceptional advocate that really shortened my time. But I still had to do a lot of the work myself, and I definitely needed a phone. that $20 gas card, the fantastic advocate, managing to snag an Obama phone, to do the calling to get shit done, the public Wi-Fi at the library for paperwork, my own refusal to blame anyone else but myself for my situation, very common attitude in the temporary housing, being able to swallow my pride. I'm sure I'm missing a few other aspects, but it's not a simple recovery process at all, and it's a very gray area. Not homeless, but I've helped distribute things, a large, sponsored activity, to the homeless in a nearby metro area park, well known as a gathering place of sorts for the homeless. New underwear, socks, and sandals. The hygiene kits were sort of a have to have, and although they were appreciated, nothing compared to their desire for some clean socks. The ladies were especially grateful for the underwear, although sadly we didn't have many sizes available. The sandals came in handy for the group showers in homeless shelters. Last time I was in charge of handing out sandals, it was pretty common to see feet in very rough shape. I remember one gentleman kept hovering nearby, well before the appointed time for handouts, so I chatted him up. He had only one pair of shoes, and they were too small, so his feet were constantly hurting, and his socks wore out pretty fast. He was limping badly wherever he walked. It was painful to watch. He knew the sandals were on the menu, so he couldn't wait a half hour before the start. He took off his shoes and threw them out into the park. He was a very grateful man. Another that I remember was a really tall guy. Of course we had only limited numbers of sizes, including with sandals, and by the time he came through, he was the last I saw. We were plumb out of all but the size small. I expected him to walk away, but he took a pair, dropped it to the ground, and measured his feet against them. He had big feet, and the sandals pretty much went only to the back of his arch, not even under the heel. He shrugged his shoulders and said, "Hey, close enough," and off he went with his new prize. Kind of broke my heart to see him settle, but he seemed to have a good zen attitude about it. I never needed much of anything. I was homeless in Australia. I had a tent. I was a dirtbag in a rock climbing hotspot, so my weekly access to an actual shower was very common occurrence. We all cooked over wood fired, so we all smelt like smoke and old sweat. We all did cat showers. Correct this. I needed rides to get to said showers, and the laundromat and the oldie bins, and you could get them from other climbers, or from the locals, all adorable and very well used to dirtbags like me. I never felt threatened as a woman. We were a community, except most of these people had homes to return to, and I had shrinking cash, no car, no license, and a tent pitched in a national park. In the end, the best thing someone did for me was to invite me to come over anytime and pitch my tent in his yard. Dude lived with 2 other men, and when I ran out of money I gave him a call, and he didn't even miss a beat. Sure, I'll talk to them. Here's the address. See you soon. I hitched a ride with a guy for 5H for my last $20 and arrived in Adelaide in one of its hottest summer. 45 CU bed socks aren't on my mind. I spent a couple of months with them, paid them back by being a cleaning fairy. Fuck the amount of mice pop in that kitchen before I got there, and cooking cakes. In Australia the dumpster diving is insane. There is literally no need to buy food, ever. You may not end up cooking anything you want, but you'll always have enough to eat something great and fresh. Fact, one day I found 3L of goon in the bin because their cardboard boxes had taken some water damage. Another day we found some beach chairs. I miss it. In the end I went and worked for people for free and was abused quite a lot. I lived on an old mattress at the end of stables whilst caring for horses. It was bonkers. A friend, another rock climber, such sweet people, ended up introducing me to her brother, who then housed me for a while in Melbourne. I walked down to town every day until I found a job, and then bartered some youths doing a casual curb yard sale for an old pink bike. Spent the very last of my mom sent money on it, and I begged my employer to pay me after 2 weeks. They did. I moved and found my own place after that point. I have never been homeless since, but I have lived as a long-term hostel resident, trading labor for free nights for 2 years, up until a year ago. When I tried to open a bank account I had to jump through loops, because hostel resident is under the same tab as homeless shelter at banks is. I found that offensive, mostly because the hostel often turned away homeless people, even if they were clean, and we had room. It's not the same. This is a touristy city and often hostels simply won't accommodate, and that means I had it infinitely easier than in a shelter, so what the hell. Not homeless but have a friend of my mom and I who we met while he was homeless and have spent a lot of time with, and his favorite things we gave him are a towel, socks, and a nice pair of jeans in his size. His favorite though was the time we spent with him. So one day my mom and I were leaving Denny's near our house and saw a man with all his possessions sleeping on the park bench outside. It had been a cold, wet Florida day, winter, and so we checked our trunk to see if we had anything we could give him. All we could find was this thick, brightly colored towel. I walked over to him to give it to him and notice he is sound asleep, which I'm sure is hard to achieve on a cold hard park bench, so I lay the towel next to him and leave. Now we drive past this bench every day, to school and from work, etc. Every day he has it covering his possessions, and every night he's wrapped inside of this bright, flowered towel. Never once have we seen him begging or move from the bench. So we go to Denny's again a week or two later and order him a cheeseburger and fries to go, and we hand it to him on our way out. He was thankful and quiet and we left. A couple weeks later we invite him to have dinner with us and we pay for it and he agrees. He tells us about his life. He was honorably discharged and also used to be a CEO of a business and was quite well off. He was quite religious and one day God told him to drop everything and live on the streets to spread the word of God, to live a humble life. So he does so. He explains how he still has money in the bank, just saving. He pays for his daughter's house and college, has a cell phone and much others, and to our surprise, paid for the meal when he had told us he was going to use the restroom halfway through to make sure we wouldn't pay. We didn't have much money at the time as my parents were split and my mother is a teacher, so this was just so unexpected and appreciated. Every day before school we would leave early to bring home cooked food and breakfast and just sit with him for a bit. All the waitresses at Denny's knew him and told him his family would come up every week and spend time with him. He loved hearing about our lives and never forgot a single thing, bringing them up the next time we spoke. Oh, is still in the hospital. Is the cat feeling better? ECT. Shortly after the city removed the bench he was basically living in, so he relocated to a storage unit down the street. He used it to store his items. The employees at the facility even gave him a key to the gate, so he could enter and exit the facility and restroom at night after the gate was locked. The rest of his day would be spent sitting on a curb of the sidewalk, not the street curb, but a 2-foot cement wall between the sidewalk and storage facility. He was robbed a few times, but never took it personally and always said he didn't mind it, as long as they didn't try to hurt him or take anything. That meant a lot to him. Basically if he could buy it again he didn't mind. He'd say they probably need it more than I do. We still visit him as often as possible. We take him to doctor's visits, shopping, whatever he needed, but couldn't get to as he had major back issues from the military and could barely walk. He was always so nice, brought a smile to our face, was so grateful for everything we did, and is truly an amazing human. I was homeless as a teen one winter. Because my mother and stepfather were homeless we were able to stay at a shelter. It was pretty bad, but way better than the streets, and had access to food and showers. So my situation might have been a little unusual point, but what I used to yearn for was a lock to keep the things I did own safe and private. Fresh fruit that wasn't a dry red delicious apple, or a cup of hot chocolate and somewhere quiet and pleasant to sit and drink it. I dreamed of being a normal person again. Last year a friend of ours was homeless for about 3 weeks because his sublet fell through. He couldn't stay with us because he worked and had been living 3 hours away. He was living out of his car and showering using a cheap gym membership. He asked us for a lock, a gym bag, so that he could carry a change of clothes to the gym and fit in better, and some non-perishable food because he was barely eating. We were able to help with those things, and he's doing fine now, and has a nice place and a better job. In general, the people who are homeless short term are easier to help, especially if they don't have serious mental health problems or substance issues, but it seems like almost anyone would benefit from having something to carry their stuff in other than trash bags, new socks, and cold water, in summer. And dried fruit, and beef jerky, nuts too, if they don't have bad teeth. If they refuse anything that isn't cash, well, That's a judgment call. They may well want to buy drugs or alcohol, and it's up to you to decide whether you want to potentially enable that. But if they have a sign that says need food, I'm gonna be less inclined to help. If they do refuse food when it's offered, some will refuse unsealed food because they are afraid of tampering, which makes sense. Honestly, I needed a safe place to stay, so I would be safe from violence, able to continue my studies, and attend to my complex medical needs. But that's not something you can easily just give to others. I think the single biggest help for me came in the form of a car. I paid about $2,200 for a sheet box, but it meant I had independent transport, which was a huge practical help. It meant I always had a place to sleep. Even when the hostels were fully CT, I was able to continue my education and keep my medical appointments, which I really struggled to do, living in a semi-rural area with shitty public transport. So it's safe to say that car no doubt saved my life. It would have been easy to fall into the traps of addiction/substance abuse. Just to cope with the shitty situation I was in, I saw so many bright, smart, funny PPL wither away solely because of housing issues. On top of that, clean underwear is a big one, access to facilities to wash your clothes/have a shower, and sometimes even use a real kitchen were all big helps. When you're homeless, you end up eating a lot of cheap, shitty food, so healthy decent food was also helpful. But you have to keep in mind, many PPL don't have access to a kitchen to cook decent/fresh food. For women, access to sanitary products that aren't the cheapest nastiest shit was also a blessing. It's such a simple thing, but it really makes a difference. And I think one of the best things you can do for homeless people is just to treat them like human beings, not judge them. It is another cheap, easy thing to do that can really make a big difference. Allowing homeless folks to maintain some dignity while they receive charity is a big deal to a lot of people. Edited to add, when it comes to food, it is often better to give food vouchers. That allows people to buy food that they will actually eat, that they know they can cook, prepare, etc. I know people mean well, but I've had to offload more cans of spam than I can even remember. I'm vegetarian, but also have diet restrictions because of my health, so I turned down a lot of donated food so that it could be donated to someone who could actually eat it. I was always anxious of appearing like a beggar, being choosy, but I knew that it would just be a waste for me to take things I knew I couldn't eat. Also, if you come across homeless folks who are studying, ask if they need anything for their studies, or PPL who are artists. A blank book and some cheap pencils can be a safe means of therapy and escape. Talk to people, treat them with the same dignity and respect you'd give anyone else, and simply listening to them is a gift that can't be bought. And on behalf of all homeless people who may benefit from the generosity of strangers, thank you, most sincerely. When you have nothing, even the smallest gesture of goodwill means so much. So, thank you to everyone who cares enough to want to help. A little bit of empathy and compassion goes a long way. I was homeless due to mental illness. I took classes to show I knew how to budget and understand a lease. The homeless shelter and a different social program had bus passes for free. I also lived off of plasma donations until BioLife started excluding those staying in homeless shelters. My public library was my safe spot. I could use the computers to job hunt, keep in touch with people just in case I went missing, watch Netflix a little to just unwind from the stress of being homeless. Best thing someone did for me, it was pouring rain, and I had walked nearly 1 mile in it from work back to the shelter in the middle of the night. Someone stopped their car in the middle of the street and gave me an umbrella. Best thing a shelter employee did for me. The lady who ran the Salvation Army got to know me and why I was homeless after a few stays. I was suddenly homeless one night, in tears because I had gone to the hospital already that night, after closing my job, to see if I could get sent to this interim nursing home for people like me with mental illnesses, but aren't ill enough to be hospitalized. I was turned down at the hospital, and having a very hard time with this. I was bawling. I also had weed on me, and the lady who ran the shelter said she wouldn't get rid of it. She told me to go outside and have some to relax, and she would put it in the safe overnight. She told me she knew I'm better on my worst days than majority of people staying there. That was my last time homeless, and I'm starting my 3-year living in the same spot all on my own for the first time in my life. For me the toughest was either steady shelter or food. It's a long story of getting to the point of homelessness, but at the beginning I stayed in a car. For food I mostly had friends give me food, or I sold what little I had to buy cheap food. I was near a river, and it was summer, so I washed in the river every day. Eventually I lost the car, but there was a shopping plaza nearby with an abandoned Sam's Club. They had moved down the road to a new building, so I figured it was a safe place. Instead of breaking in I used a pipe in the back of the building to climb to the roof, because I thought someone might find me sleeping inside, but they'd never find me on the roof. I found some cushions on a couch that was being thrown out and got them to the roof. I was able to prop open an air conditioning panel to give me shade from the sun. But it was still pretty miserable, especially when it rained. One day I woke up to the building being bulldozed and the roof collapsing near me. I had to run across the building and jump to the next building in the plaza, a Jones or Michael's or something. I spent that night in the stairwell of a hotel, constantly jumping whenever I heard anyone. The next day I found another hotel had a maintenance tunnel that was easy to get into, so I snuck in when no one was looking. I stayed there a few months hidden away behind boxes, using hot water heater runoff water to clean up with. When I couldn't get to the river, I was finally able to get a job, so food became less of an issue. On Thanksgiving I was found out and had to flee while a guy was shouting at me and calling the cops. Finally, after lying and saying that I was losing my house, a coworker said I could stay with her. This gave me the chance to save money and get back on my feet, and I was able to get my own place. Back in 2015 I made some decisions that left me sitting in my car in the parking lot of my sister's apartment complex. I had no home, no money, and no job. I called my mom and asked her for help. Her and my dad talked to each other. They had been divorced and were not speaking to each other for 10 years at this point, so that was huge. And they told me to drive from Texas to Alabama to go live with my dad for a while, so I would not be homeless. As soon as I got to Alabama I set up an appointment with my local Veterans Affairs psychiatrist. I served in the United States Coast Guard and was honorably discharged, so I got full VA benefits, so I could get refills on my psychiatric meds. When I sat down in front of my psychiatrist for the first time, the first words out of his mouth were 100% easy. Some of you unfamiliar with the VA are undoubtedly wondering what he meant by that. After you get out of the military you can apply for a disability rating through the VA for injuries you think you got while you were in the military. After your paperwork for the disability claim makes its way through the bureaucracy you receive a rating for it which can range from 0 to 100%. You will receive money from the VA once a month, the amount of which depends on your percentage. My psychiatrist told me that I had a solid case to receive 100% disability for the rest of my life. Because of what happened to me in the military. It has been about 4 years since I first started receiving those disability payments. I'm very well off now compared to where I was between getting out of the military and receiving my disability payments. So to answer Op's question, the best thing someone did for me while I was homeless was providing me with a roof over my head. Also, talking to a VA psychiatrist who was willing to advocate for me to get the disability rating I desperately needed was a game changer as well. TLDR, homeless veteran finally found a VA employee who gave enough of a damn to get him the disability money he so desperately needed. What I needed most was twofold: to swallow my pride and admit my homelessness to people who could actually help me, and stop using meth, which also fed into that first issue. The reason I became homeless was due to using meth, but I was still making decent money driving Uber. However, the friends that got me into meth turned out to not be such great friends, and the people I met who could have helped me more, I was too proud to admit I was living out of the car and too addicted to risk getting any deeper into their lives. I had made one friend whose mother was a Nog in the Bay Area Filipino community. She was widowed and would use me as her personal drive more or less and introduce me to many of her friends. She knew I was homeless, but was kind enough not to press the issue when I lied about where I stayed and allowed me to stay in their home on numerous occasions. Also through her I made contacts that gave me more consistent work driving and led to me getting free dental care, to remove a wisdom tooth and get a root canal taken care of. That could have been a disastrous situation for me financially had I not received that care when I did. Ultimately nothing could fix my addiction until I was ready to do something about it, though. My family was very supportive once I came clean to them, and that has helped me immensely. I think the number one thing most addicts need is someone or somewhere to get rid of the stigma and feel safe asking for help. There are a lot of people who say they're there, but when push comes to helping a meth addict, they're not really there for you. Former homeless here due to childhood abuse. Lived a mix of sofa surfing, occasional nights on the street, mostly inside 24 hours McDonald's, and homeless shelters. My friend's mum took me to a homeless youth shelter, since she had been through the system herself, and I had no idea what to do. I don't know what would have happened to me if I'd not met that lady. I was lucky to have friends who still tried their best to include me in things, and didn't make me feel weird about not paying for things. Everyone knew I was homeless, but we just didn't talk about it, and I was treated as a normal person. I think when I was in the homeless hostels things that made me feel more human and were really valuable as a woman were little cosmetics that I received in a package from a women's charity. They really helped boost my confidence. Other things that were invaluable to me when I was being rehomed were pots, pans, and household items. Usually you are put in a tenancy, but you have no belongings and no money. It's hard to start from scratch, so those things are really useful. Someone very kindly donated me a mattress and another person a cooker. Again, I don't know where I'd be without their help. The one thing that I really needed, that no one seemed to be able to help me with, was money for my prescription medicine. I have PTSD, and I'm prescribed Prozac, but I couldn't register for any benefits without an address, and couldn't afford to pay my prescription on the handouts I was living off of. Being in that situation, it's easy to see how people can slip through the cracks. For me it was family. I was struggling really hard with bad addiction, and I was in no contact with my family, and what it took for me was my mom stopped talking to her because of her heavy drinking, and a close family friend to come looking for me in the city. They went to the shelter and gave them her phone number to give to me. I still remember that night. It had been about 2 years since I had contacted anyone, and I was on the streets in the day and the shelter at night. I ripped up her phone number right there because I was still angry, but a day or two later I ended up calling her from a payphone, and that she picked me up, and I lived with her again. That helped me get clean and get a job. The addiction started again in other ways, but that was the last time I was homeless. Struggled with addiction more later on, but found a best friend which turned into this 2-year plus healthy relationship, and at this point my girlfriend and her mother are what keeps me off the drugs and off the streets. So I guess in other words, get a healthy support network. I struggle with mental health freaking daily, but my mental health worker / psychiatrist / occupational therapist help so much. If addiction is part of what's making you homeless, then go into an addiction services center and get an addiction worker. I tried many treatment centers and they all helped in some way. Just turned 27 and been clean off the hard drugs for just over 2 years, I believe. Supports. Sorry this is so long, I'm kind of venting and getting stuff out at the same time as trying to help someone. If you don't read all of this, then just one word. Supports. Sorry if this turned out to be too long for a story with not so many events, but my major is foreign languages and literature, so yeah, point never been homeless thank God, but found myself being the helper by doing what I thought to be not such a big deal. I'll tell you why I decided to tell the story. Point, I was on my way back from school one early spring afternoon, and I saw this old guy struggling to cross the street. Now that was nothing unusual. My apartment block, communist era, lovely, is right next to an old people's pub, and so seeing drunk dudes in their 60s and 70s is nothing new. Point, still not wanting grandpa to be ran over by a car, I helped him cross the road and noticed he didn't smell like alcohol. He asked me if I had any money so he could buy a bread, and remembering that I was home alone, I made the then thought to be a mistake of letting him to my place so he could eat something. This was right after a giving In Orthodox countries, givings are things a couple times a year when you make a lot of food and give it to people for free in the honor of a loved one who died. So that wasn't a worry point. I ended up also letting him take a shower and gave him some clothes, of which I had plenty. In Eastern Europe, parents will literally not let you throw away old clothes. That wasn't a problem since I was a big 15-year-old and the dude was probably almost a foot shorter than me. Was surprised that the dude had a wallet and ID card and a credit card. Now I thought that was it about grandpa, but apparently after he left he went to a homeless shelter. Looking all clean and fresh, they let him stay. Apparently he has an average pension, and so he can afford to stay there 365 days a year, instead of just the cold period in which most people are allowed to stay. I know, only because he later came to my door to tell me that. I was surprised it was him. Dude looked like 10 and even his shaved and showered self that I remembered. So that's why I'm telling the story. He's old and living in a homeless shelter. I'm sure he's not on Reddit. He also told me that the reason why he was homeless is because his wife kicked him out some time before. Haven't heard from him in like a year and a half. Hope he's doing good. I got out of an abusive relationship with nothing to my name. I lived in my car for 3 months. My own mother refused to let me stay with her because I wasn't a Christian, and she thought I would taint my nephew. The kindest thing anyone ever did. A few years before rock bottom, I lived in an apartment in town. When I left, they initially refused to give me the $500 advance fee due to a technicality. I gave my notice a day too late. I worked around the corner from the office. Desperate and on a complete impulse, I decided to go to there and see if there was a chance of getting that money back. It was 2 years later. The office was run by 2 old lesbian chicks, and there were always lots of dogs around. Surprisingly, they remembered me. I think because I would always pet all of their doggies. I started to tell them about my situation, and, before I had even gotten into it, one of the ladies printed the check and handed it, wordlessly, to me. If I had lived in a giant complex, there is no way I would have seen that money. But with it, I was able to move across the country, something I desperately needed. $500 to go 1,500 miles was a huge stretch, but with minimal food and refilling my water bottle whenever I stopped, I was able to make it. It was the first time I had ever driven across the country on my own, and there were some hairy moments. I had a place to stay with my dad, and it was a good thing too. Because, as I was pulling into his apartment complex, my car's transmission blew. I think about those 2 ladies a lot, and I wonder if they realize what that advance meant to me. Currently homeless 3 months. Stability and opportunity is my answer. Not having a family to help you when you need them the most is the hardest thing. Not even my own mother, especially after all I have done to help her in her time of need, just keeps me away at a huge distance, but still wants to try to contact me via email to ask how I'm doing and to say good luck. That faking hoe. My grandmother digging through my bank accounts and stealing from me, and my roommate causing nothing but hell for the both of us alongside my aunt and other relatives. Narcissistic and greedy is how you would describe almost my entire family. Also, being born with black skin in a all Hispanic Catholic family was torturous growing up, as I was treated as the black sheep in my family. So now, of course, after I spend my money trying to help them with their financial needs after things got supposedly better between me and my family, they decided, after I lose my job, after taking time off to help them with my stepfather's funeral, that they don't need me anymore and start pushing me out the door over time. And of course, when I wind up homeless, they are nowhere to be found to help, like I helped them. So trying to get out of homelessness by yourself is the hardest thing to do, even with all the state and government programs that take forever and produce almost no results. Being homeless means having no personal stability for finances, time, sleep, and much more. For example, trying to find a place to sleep is the worst when you have to consider a place outside. So, I head underground via subway system. Oh, by the way, I live in New York City, if I did not mention that already. Falling asleep on the train is not fun at all because of the high risk of having your stuff stolen from you and being pickpocketed while you are asleep, which I had to learn the hard way. When you lose the most important things you need, ID, social security card, insurance information, and have no money, it kinda feels like game over. Trying to work and getting these things back on top of trying to stay clean and shaved, trying to eat, finding a place to sleep, phone about to be cut off, no transportation whatsoever, nobody to help you and your family, trying to keep my job, keeping my health in check, dealing with police reports and dead-end investigations on finding my things, and not much help being offered by the police. It's basically impossible to stay afloat. I'm a hard-working man who does not beg. I have a dishwasher position that doesn't pay enough whatsoever to help my situation. Not even enough to get a cheap Airbnb rental to keep myself off the streets like I was able to before. I have my OSHA's 30, which is basically worthless now because of the new law in New York that requires all construction workers to have a OSHA 30 and free programs, basically giving away OSHA 30 cards to everyone like free candy, dropping the wage all the way down to minimum wage for a OSHA 30 holder. I also have my flaggers and swing staging hoist certs as well, with experience in construction as a laborer and hoist operator. I cannot find a job in these positions at all, and with no physical IDs or SSC I can't even get another job in my field. Trying to save money is impossible in this situation, considering how little hours I get in my dishwashing position, which pays minimum wage in a tax-heavy and expensive city. Even after all of this, I refuse to accept homeless, and every single day I'm researching, trying to find out how to get myself out of this situation. And it feels impossible. I don't even care if it's an off-the-books job, as long I can make at the very least $500 a week. I can keep myself off the streets using Airbnb and continue from there. But my situation is too faked up for most people to want to be involved with to help. So, I'm alone in my endeavors to get myself out of